Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're going to talk about something really powerful, an ancient way of remembering things that might just be more important now than ever. And it's a system that has nothing to do with screens or books, but everything to do with the world all around us. Okay, let's just dive right in because we have to start with this really strange irony of our modern world, right? We are surrounded by all these devices that give us instant access to literally all of human knowledge. But what if? What if having all that information is actually making us worse at remembering? What if it's weakening our own personal connection to what's real? I mean, with endless information just a click away, it feels like we should know everything, right? But are we just outsourcing our brains? And if we are we losing a really fundamental part of what it even means to be human? And this right here just nails the problem. On one hand, you've got this virtual world offering a simulation of knowing things. And on the other, you have our ancestors who had the real thing. It all leads to this huge question. What if the real world itself is the ultimate memory system, and we've just forgotten how to use it? So, to try and answer that, we're going to travel way up north to the Bering Sea. We're going to meet the Aleut people and learn about their way of knowing through a man named Kuyux. See, for the Aleut people, history isn't something you just find in a book. It's literally etched into the landscape around them. The islands where generations of their people are buried, the way the sea moves, the patterns of the wind, all of these are like chapters in this living, breathing history book that holds thousands of years of memory. And they really put this philosophy into practice. Get this. Kuyux remembers that his mentor, his Acha, spoke maybe 200 words to him over 8 years of training. That's it. And the reason is pretty simple. For the Aleut, real understanding doesn't come from someone explaining everything to you. It comes from direct experience, from intuition.
So this gets to a really cool idea called embodied intelligence. It's not about thinking with just your brain, locked up in your skull. No, this is an intelligence that uses your entire body. It's using every single one of your senses to read the environment in a state of complete and total awareness. It's how these veteran hunters could feel a sea lion was about to surface, long before they could actually see anything.
Okay, so how does this idea connect across the globe? Well, it turns out a single bird, of all things, shows us the way. 11,000 kilometers. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's how far the quokka, which you might know as the bar-tailed godwit, flies every single year. Non-stop, from the Arctic all the way down to New Zealand. It is the longest non-stop flight of any bird in the world. Just wow. And here's the beautiful part. Kuyuk's people up in the Arctic, they knew the birds, but they had no idea where they disappeared to every year. And the Maori people, way down in the south, they knew exactly when the birds would show up, but they didn't know where they came from. This one little bird physically connects two peoples who share this deep, intuitive way of reading the world. And this is all wrapped up in this beautiful, old Maori proverb. It's about these unseen origins, sure, but it's more than that. It's really a call to action. It's saying, hey, even if you can't see the beginning, your ancestors have set a path. It's your job, our job, to keep that wisdom going. Okay, so if this way of knowing, this embodied intelligence, was so incredibly powerful, what happened? What changed? Well, a piece of technology that we completely take for granted today fundamentally changed our relationship with memory and the world. See, in cultures that didn't rely on writing, what scholars called primary orality, knowledge wasn't just in stories. They embedded it into everything, into songs, chants, even weaving and dance. These weren't just pretty art forms. They were really sophisticated memory technologies that required everyone to be physically present, creating these super tight-knit communities. And you might think writing was invented for poetry or great stories, right? Nope. According to researcher Lynn Kelly, it was invented for bureaucracy. Yeah, for tracking grain and taxes. Super boring stuff. It let us store tons of data, but we paid a huge price. We lost that performative, communal way of sharing knowledge. The philosopher Charles Taylor has a really useful way of thinking about this big shift. He says we moved from a porous reality. Think of it like being open, where the world feels enchanted and connected to you, to a buffered reality. Now we're kind of sealed off in our own little bubbles, looking at a world that feels disconnected, just a bunch of objects. So, is that it then? Is that connection just gone forever, or are there ways we can find it again, even in our crazy modern world? Well, the personal story of a man named Dr. J. Matanga suggests it's not only possible, but it's essential. The story starts on a beach after a big storm. Dr. Matanga finds this piece of driftwood. And over several years, with no training, no plan, he just started carving it. He said he didn't even know what he was making. The meaning just sort of came out of him. He talks about it like it could be a genetic memory, or maybe something from the spirit. And what he ended up with is this incredible memory device. The scarred knot at the top, that represents the humility you need before you speak. Then there's the spiral with 29 steps. Each one is a generation of his ancestors. And the paddle shape at the bottom, that's the Great Migration, the journey of his people. His whole story, his whole identity, is literally carved into this piece of wood. And this is the key takeaway, right? The very act of making something, of carving, is an act of remembering. As he was shaping the wood, he was also etching his history, his beliefs, into a physical object. And in doing so, creating this powerful bond between himself, his ancestors, and the land. Which brings us back to this incredible piece of wisdom from Dr. Matanga's work, the scarred head of his staff. It teaches us that to get back to these deeper ways of knowing, we need a little humility. We have to be willing to admit that our modern, buffered view of the world might not be the whole story. Okay, so as we start to wrap this up, let's make this personal. Let's turn these ideas back on ourselves. When you hear about this stuff, these deep, spiritual, enchanted connections to the world, what comes up for you? Is there a part of you that resists it, that feels uncomfortable? And on the flip side, what part of it feels like a longing? What part resonates? And here's another thing to think about. How much is our constant reliance on reading, on screens, getting in the way? I mean, what would actually happen if you just put the phone down, left the book at home, and just went somewhere in nature to just be there, to be totally present and just listen? You know, every single landscape has stories baked into it. The hills, the rivers, the old paths, they all have a history. So what about your story? What stories are memorialized in the landscape where your people came from? Digging into that, it might be way more than a history lesson. It could tell you something really deep about who you are today. And really, that's the final thought here. That's the challenge. The world is speaking, all the time. It's a huge part of how we remember who we really are. The only question is, are we ready to listen?